The static crackled through the command center like broken glass. Colonel Martinez stared at the radio with the kind of expression reserved for ghost sightings. 3 days ago, Captain Evangeline Phantom Reeves had been declared KIA after her F-35 disappeared over the Kandahar Valley. The wreckage had been confirmed. The memorial service was scheduled for Thursday. Her personal effects were already being shipped to her sister in Vermont. But ghosts don't use proper authentication codes. Tower, this is Phantom 77 requesting immediate landing clearance. Code Bravo authentication follows. Whiskey Tango 997 Alpha. The voice was unmistakably hers, that slight rasp from years of breathing recycled cockpit air, the measured cadence that had talked 3 different squadrons through impossible odds in Iraq and Afghanistan. Martinez grabbed the handset with trembling fingers. Phantom 77, this is Tower Control. Please confirm your current position and aircraft type. The words felt surreal leaving his mouth. He was talking to a dead woman. Tower, I'm flying a prototype aircraft approximately 15 clicks southwest of your position. I need immediate clearance for runway 27. I have critical intelligence regarding Operation Blackwater, and I'm running on fumes. Through the reinforced glass of the control tower, Senior Master Sergeant Diana Kowalski pressed her binoculars against the southern horizon. The afternoon sun painted the mountains in harsh shadows, making identification difficult. But there, a dark speck moving faster than physics should allow. Not the sleek profile of an F-35, but something else entirely. Something that seemed to bend light around its edges. Sir, Kowalski's voice carried the weight of 20 years in the Air Force. I've got visual on an unidentified aircraft inbound from the south. It's, Jesus, Colonel, I've never seen anything like it. The aircraft materialized from the heat shimmer like a mirage becoming real. It was roughly the size of a fighter jet, but shaped like an arrowhead crafted from shadow itself. No visible weapons pylons, no traditional control surfaces. It moved with the fluid grace of a predator, silent as death even at what had to be supersonic speeds. Martinez felt his chest tighten. 3 months ago, rumors had circulated about a classified program called Project Revenant, aircraft so advanced that their very existence was compartmentalized beyond top secret. Pilots who disappeared weren't always casualties. Sometimes they were recruited. Phantom 77, you are cleared for emergency landing on runway 27. Medical and security teams are standing by. Negative on medical tower, I'm not injured, but I need to speak with intelligence immediately. What I've seen changes everything. As the black aircraft descended, Martinez realized that Captain Evangeline Reeves hadn't died 3 days ago. She had been reborn into something far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. The mystery of the Kandahar Valley was about to unfold, and with it, the truth about America's most classified aviation program. But first, they had to figure out how to land an aircraft that defied every law of aerodynamics they knew. Squadron leader James "Bulldog" Patterson had been tracking unusual radar signatures for weeks. Based at Bagram Airfield, his reconnaissance unit specialized in monitoring Taliban movements through the treacherous mountain passes of eastern Afghanistan. But lately, the signatures he was seeing defied explanation. Aircraft that appeared and disappeared like phantoms, moving at speeds that should have torn conventional jets apart. Patterson was old-school military, 32 years of service, 2 tours in Vietnam, and a reputation for being impossible to surprise. But when the secure line rang at 3:47 hours on a Tuesday morning, even he wasn't prepared for what he heard. Bulldog, this is Overlord Control. We need immediate confirmation of any unusual aircraft activity in Grid Sector 77 Alpha over the past 72 hours. The voice belonged to General Rebecca Stone, a woman whose clearance level was so high that most personnel didn't even know she existed. Patterson had worked with her twice before, both times on operations that officially never happened. Ma'am, I've been tracking intermittent contacts in that sector. Unknown aircraft, possibly experimental. They don't match any known Taliban or coalition signatures. Describe the flight characteristics, Bulldog. Patterson pulled up the radar logs on his encrypted terminal. The data still made his head spin. Ma'am, these contacts are showing speeds in excess of Mach 3.5 at low altitude. No heat signature, minimal radar cross-section. They appear to be using some kind of stealth technology I've never encountered. There was a long pause. When Stone spoke again, her voice carried the weight of classified knowledge. Bulldog, I need you to understand something. What you've been tracking isn't Taliban. It isn't coalition. And officially, it doesn't exist. Yes, ma'am. 3 days ago, we lost contact with Captain Evangeline Reeves during a routine reconnaissance mission. Her aircraft was found destroyed in the Kandahar Valley. She was declared KIA. But 12 hours ago, she made contact using an authentication code that should have been impossible. Patterson felt his blood chill. Evangeline Reeves wasn't just any pilot. She was a legend, the first woman to complete the military's most classified flight training program, a pilot whose skills bordered on supernatural. If she was involved in whatever was happening in Sector 77 Alpha, then this was bigger than anyone realized. Ma'am, what are your orders? I'm sending you everything we have on Project Revenant. Read it, memorize it, then burn it. And Bulldog, what you're about to learn will change how you think about air superiority forever. The encrypted files arrived within minutes. As Patterson read, his understanding of modern warfare began to crumble. Project Revenant wasn't just about building better aircraft. It was about creating pilots who could merge with their machines, pushing the boundaries of human capability beyond all previous limits. And Captain Evangeline Reeves had just become the program's first successful test subject. The prototype aircraft designated Wraith 1 settled onto the runway with the grace of a falling leaf. No scream of engines, no violent deceleration, just a whisper of displaced air as landing gear that seemed to materialize from the aircraft's belly touched down on the concrete. Colonel Martinez watched from the control tower as ground crews surrounded the impossible machine. Up close, it was even more unsettling. The aircraft's surface wasn't painted black, it seemed to absorb light itself, creating an absence that hurt to look at directly. No visible cockpit, no traditional control surfaces, just sleek, predatory curves that suggested violence held in perfect check. The canopy opened with a sound like breaking vacuum. Captain Evangeline Reeves emerged, and Martinez felt his breath catch. She looked exactly as she had 3 days ago, same close-cropped auburn hair, same penetrating green eyes, same compact frame that had made her the perfect candidate for high-G maneuvers. But something fundamental had changed. She moved with a fluid precision that seemed almost inhuman, her head tilting at angles that suggested she was listening to sounds no one else could hear. "Colonel," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the flight line despite the distance, "we need to talk." Martinez descended from the tower, his security detail flanking him. As they approached, he noticed that the aircraft's surface was still warm despite having shown no heat signature on approach. The metal seemed to pulse with its own inner life. "Captain Reeves," Martinez began, then stopped. The woman standing before him was wearing a flight suit unlike anything in the Air Force inventory. The material seemed to shift and flow like liquid, embedded with circuitry that pulsed with soft blue light. "We thought you were dead." "I was," she replied with matter-of-fact calm, "for approximately 6 minutes and 27 seconds. Then they brought me back." "They?" Reeves glanced toward the mountains, her expression unreadable. "The program is deeper than you know, Colonel. Project Revenant isn't just about building better aircraft. It's about creating a new breed of pilot, the kind who can handle what's coming." Martinez felt the weight of implications pressing down on him. "What's coming, Captain?" The Chinese have been developing their own version of this technology. We've been intercepting their test flights for months. But last week, they achieved something we didn't think was possible. They've weaponized the neural interface. The neural interface. Martinez had heard whispers about it, technology that allowed pilots to connect directly with their aircraft systems, eliminating the delay between thought and action. But the reports had suggested it was still theoretical. "Captain, I need you to come with me. General Stone wants to debrief you personally." Reeves nodded, but her attention was already elsewhere. "Colonel, you should know that my disappearance wasn't an accident. I was targeted. Someone leaked the location of my test flight to hostile forces." "Who?" Her green eyes met his, and Martinez saw something there that made his blood freeze. "Someone with access to your command structure. Someone who knows about Revenant. And they're still here." The debriefing room was a sterile box of concrete and fluorescent lighting, designed to strip away any sense of comfort or familiarity. General Stone sat across from Captain Reeves, her expression carved from granite. Between them lay a stack of classified documents thick enough to stop a bullet. "Start from the beginning, Captain," Stone said. "Your last confirmed position was grid reference 77 Alpha 9. Your aircraft was found destroyed 12 kilometers from that position. The crash investigation concluded that you were killed on impact." Reeves leaned back in her chair, her movement still carrying that unsettling fluid grace. "The crash investigation was correct, ma'am. I was killed on impact. But the investigation didn't account for the Revenant Protocol's fail-safes." Stone's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "The neural interface doesn't just connect pilot to aircraft, General. It creates a backup of the pilot's consciousness within the aircraft's quantum core. In the event of catastrophic failure, the system can reconstitute the pilot." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Stone had spent 40 years in the military, had overseen operations that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. But this was beyond anything she had imagined. "You're telling me that you died, and the aircraft brought you back to life." "Not brought back, ma'am. Rebuilt. The process takes approximately 6 hours. During that time, the aircraft operates autonomously, using the pilot's stored consciousness to complete the mission." Stone studied the woman across from her. Every medical scan had confirmed that this was indeed Captain Evangeline Reeves, same DNA, same retinal patterns, same dental records. But something in her eyes suggested depths that hadn't been there before. "What happened during those 6 hours, Captain?" "I was elsewhere, conscious but disconnected from physical form. I could see through the aircraft's sensors, feel what it felt. The Chinese fighters that attacked me, they were using similar technology, but theirs was different, cruder. Their pilots weren't integrated with their aircraft. They were possessed by them." Stone felt a chill run down her spine. Possessed. The Chinese approach sacrifices the pilot's humanity for raw performance. Their pilots become extensions of the aircraft's will rather than partners. They're faster, more ruthless, but they're no longer human in any meaningful sense. "And our approach?" Reeves was quiet for a long moment. "We maintain our humanity while gaining capabilities that border on the supernatural. But the process changes you. I can feel the aircraft even now, General. It's part of me in ways that I don't fully understand." Stone leaned forward. "What else did you learn during your reconnaissance?" "The Chinese have a facility in the Wakan corridor. They're mass-producing these hybrid pilots, and they're planning something for next month, something they call Project Tianlong." "Dragon." "Yes, ma'am. They're going to use their hybrid pilots to establish air superiority over the entire region. Once they control the skis, they'll move ground forces into position for a full-scale invasion." Stone stood abruptly. "We need to brief the Joint Chiefs immediately." "General," Reeves said quietly, "there's something else. The leak in your command structure, I know who it is." The accusation hit the briefing room like a physical blow. General Stone's face drained of color as she processed Captain Reeves' words. Around the conference table, the assembled officers of the Joint Chiefs sat in stunned silence. "That's a serious charge, Captain," Admiral Harrison said finally. "Are you absolutely certain?" Reeves nodded, her expression grim. "During my integration with the Wraith 1 aircraft, I accessed its full surveillance records. The leak came from someone with Alpha-level clearance who had access to my flight plans 12 hours before my mission." General Stone activated the secure display screen. "Show us what you found." The screen flickered to life, displaying a complex web of communications intercepts and data transfers. At the center of the web was a single node, a classified terminal assigned to Colonel David Chen, the base's deputy intelligence officer. "Chen has been feeding information to Chinese intelligence for 8 months, Reeves continued. "He's been careful, using dead drops and encrypted communications, but the aircraft's quantum sensors recorded everything." The implications were staggering. Chen had been present at every major briefing, had access to operational plans for the entire region. If he was compromised, then virtually every American operation in Afghanistan was at risk. "Where is Colonel Chen now?" Stone asked. "He's scheduled to be in his office," replied Colonel Martinez. "But General, if he suspects we're onto him." "He'll run," Stone finished. "Or worse, he'll activate whatever endgame the Chinese have planned." Admiral Harrison leaned forward. "Captain Reeves, can your aircraft track him if he tries to escape?" "Yes, sir. The Wraith 1 can follow any vehicle or aircraft within a 100-kilometer radius. But there's something else you need to know. Chen isn't working alone. The Chinese have other assets in place, a network of sleeper agents positioned throughout the region." Stone felt the weight of command pressing down on her. "How many?" "At least 12 that I could identify. They've been in place for years, building cover identities, gaining access to sensitive positions. The attack on my aircraft was just the beginning. They're preparing for something much larger." The secure phone rang, its shrill tone cutting through the tension. Stone answered it, her face growing more grim with each passing second. "That was CENTCOM," she said after hanging up. "We've lost contact with 3 forward operating bases in the past hour. No distress calls, no indication of what happened. They just went dark." Reeves stood, her movements sharp and decisive. "It's starting. The Chinese are moving earlier than expected. They're taking out our communication nodes to blind us before the main assault." "What do you recommend, Captain?" "I need to get airborne immediately. The Wraith 1 can operate independently of ground-based communications. I can serve as a relay while tracking down the remaining Chinese assets." Stone nodded grimly. "Do it. But Captain, you're not going alone. I'm authorizing the activation of the entire Revenant Squadron." Reeves' eyes widened. "Ma'am, I'm the only pilot who's completed the full integration process. The others are still in training." "Then you'll have to bring them up to speed quickly. Because if the Chinese are moving up their timeline, we need every advantage we can get." As alarms began to sound throughout the base, Captain Evangeline Reeves walked toward the flight line with the stride of someone who had already died once and had nothing left to fear. The Revenant Squadron's hangar was a cathedral of shadows and steel, hidden beneath the main airfield in a complex that officially didn't exist. As Captain Reeves descended the reinforced staircase, she could hear the hum of quantum processors and the whisper of air circulating through advanced filtration systems. 6 aircraft waited in the darkness, each one a variation on the Wraith 1's impossible design. But where her aircraft seemed to absorb light, these were different. One shimmered like heat distortion, another appeared to be made of crystallized starlight, a third seemed to phase in and out of existence entirely. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Commander Sarah Valkyrie Morrison, the squadron's second-in-command. "They're beautiful." They're more than that, Reeves replied, approaching the nearest aircraft. They're alive. Each one is uniquely bonded to its pilot through the neural interface. The process changes both the pilot and the machine. The other 4 pilots of Revenant Squadron stood in various states of awe and apprehension. Major Thomas Reaper Vasquez, a veteran of 3 tours in Iraq, ran his hand along the surface of the crystalline aircraft. "How does it feel?" he asked quietly. "Like becoming something more than human," Reeves answered honestly. "The integration process connects your consciousness with the aircraft's quantum core. You'll be able to think at the speed of light, react faster than human reflexes allow. But you'll also feel every system, every sensor, every weapon as if they were part of your own body." Captain Diana Ghost Kowalski, the same senior master sergeant who had first spotted the Wraith One, stepped forward. "Are we still human afterward?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Reeves considered her answer carefully. "You're human in all the ways that matter, but you're also something new, something that can stand against what's coming." Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Thunderbolt Jackson, the squadron's senior pilot, checked his watch. "How long do we have?" "Integration takes 4 hours per pilot," Reeves replied. "But we can accelerate the process by running parallel integrations. Ghost and Valkyrie go first, then Reaper and Thunderbolt. I'll monitor from the Wraith One." The pilots exchanged glances. They all knew what they were volunteering for, a process that would fundamentally alter their humanity in ways they couldn't fully comprehend. But they also knew what was at stake. "I'm in," Ghost said without hesitation. "Same here," Valkyrie added. One by one, the others nodded their agreement. In the distance, the sound of explosions echoed across the valley. The Chinese assault had begun. "Then let's get started," Reeves said, activating the hangar systems. "The integration chambers are this way." As they walked deeper into the complex, emergency lighting cast long shadows on the walls. Somewhere above them, the war for the future of aerial warfare was about to begin, and the Revenant Squadron was humanity's only hope of surviving it. The integration chambers looked like medical pods designed by science fiction, each one lined with quantum processors and neural interface arrays. Captain Reeves helped Ghost and Valkyrie into their respective chambers, the liquid metal interfaces molding themselves to their bodies like second skin. "The process will feel like drowning at first," Reeves explained, her voice echoing in the sterile chamber. "Don't fight it. Let the system map your neural patterns. The aircraft will become part of you, and you'll become part of it." The integration chambers hummed to life, filling with a pale blue light that seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere. Through the transparent aluminum viewing ports, they could see Ghost and Valkyrie's faces relax into something approaching meditation. "How long before we know if it worked?" Thunderbolt asked. "You'll know," Reeves replied. "The change is unmistakable." Above them, the sound of jet engines screamed across the sky. Through the hangar's reinforced ceiling, they could hear the distant thunder of explosions. The Chinese assault was intensifying. Major Vasquez monitored the communication channels on a secured terminal. 3 more forward operating bases have gone dark. They're moving faster than anticipated. "That's because they're not just using conventional aircraft," Reeves explained. "Their hybrid pilots can operate at speeds and altitudes that would kill normal humans. They're systematically dismantling our defensive network." The integration chambers began to glow more brightly. Inside, Ghost and Valkyrie's bodies were beginning to change at a molecular level. Their neural patterns were being copied, enhanced, and integrated with quantum processors that would allow them to think at superhuman speeds. "Captain," Thunderbolt said quietly, "what happens if we don't come back from this mission?" Reeves looked at him with eyes that had already seen death and resurrection. "Then we make sure we take as many of them with us as possible. The integration process includes a failsafe. If your aircraft is destroyed, your consciousness is preserved in the quantum core. Death becomes temporary. But you said the Chinese approach was different, that their pilots become possessed by their aircraft. Their pilots lose their humanity in exchange for raw power. We maintain our humanity while gaining capabilities that match or exceed theirs. The difference is that we're still fighting for something beyond ourselves. The integration chambers began to slow their humming. Through the viewing ports, they could see Ghost and Valkyrie's eyes opening, but the eyes that looked back at them were subtly different. Still human, but with a depth that suggested vast new awareness. "How do you feel?" Reeves asked as the chambers opened. Ghost flexed her fingers and her expression was one of wonder. "I can feel it. The aircraft, it's like having a second heartbeat." Valkyrie nodded. "I can sense the quantum fields around us, the electromagnetic signatures of every system in the hangar. It's incredible." "Then it's time for your first flight," Reeves said. "Thunderbolt, Reaper, you're next." As the second wave of integrations began, the sounds of battle grew closer. The Chinese assault was progressing ahead of schedule, and the Revenant Squadron was running out of time to complete their preparations. But in the depths of the hangar, something new was being born, pilots who represented the next stage of human evolution, warriors who could stand against an enemy that had sacrificed their humanity for power. The question was whether they would be ready in time. The first indication that something had gone wrong came from the base's air defense system. Klaxons wailed as radar operators watched impossible contacts streak across their screens, aircraft moving at Mach 4.5 at altitudes that should have been uninhabitable. "Incoming hostiles, bearing 270, came the voice over the intercom. "Multiple contacts, speed and altitude beyond normal parameters." Captain Reeves sprinted toward the Wraith One, her newly integrated squadmates following behind. The integration process had been accelerated out of necessity. Thunderbolt and Reaper had completed their transformations in half the normal time, but the rushed procedure had left them disoriented and struggling to adapt to their new capabilities. "Ghost, Valkyrie, you're with me," Reeves called out. "Thunderbolt, Reaper, take a defensive position over the base. Don't engage until you're fully synchronized with your aircraft." The hangar's massive doors began to open, revealing a sky painted orange with the glow of distant explosions. The Chinese assault was closer than anyone had anticipated. Through the quantum link with her aircraft, Reeves could sense multiple hostile contacts approaching from 3 different vectors. "Phantom to tower, Revenant Squadron is airborne," she transmitted as the Wraith One lifted off with impossible grace. "We have visual on hostiles inbound from the northwest." The Chinese aircraft were unlike anything in the conventional playbook. They moved in perfect formation, their black hulls reflecting no light, their flight patterns suggesting coordination at a level that should have been impossible. But Reeves could see what others couldn't: the electromagnetic signatures of pilots who were no longer entirely human. "Ghost, do you see them?" she asked over the tactical frequency. "Confirmed, Phantom. 6 contacts flying in Delta formation. They're not using normal navigation systems." "That's because they don't need them," Reeves replied. "Their pilots are directly interfaced with the aircraft's sensors. They see everything the aircraft sees." The first engagement happened at 20,000 feet above the Kandahar Valley. The Chinese aircraft moved with predatory precision, their weapons systems targeting the Revenant Squadron with inhuman accuracy. But the American pilots had something their enemies lacked: the ability to think creatively while maintaining their technological advantages. "Valkyrie, break left and climb," Reeves ordered. "Ghost, follow me down into the valley. We're going to use the terrain to our advantage." The Wraith One dove toward the mountain peaks, its quantum processors calculating trajectories and wind patterns faster than any human mind could follow. Behind her, the Chinese aircraft followed, They're hybrid pilots driven by machine logic rather than tactical creativity. They're fast, Ghost observed, her voice tight with concentration. But they're predictable, Reeves replied. They're fighting like machines, that's their weakness. The dogfight that followed would be studied by military historians for decades. Aircraft moving at impossible speeds, maneuvering in ways that defied physics, weapons systems that could target enemies through solid rock. But at the center of it all were human pilots who had retained their humanity while gaining godlike capabilities. Phantom, this is Thunderbolt. I'm reading multiple contacts inbound from the east. They're targeting the base directly. Copy that, Thunderbolt. Reaper, you're with him. Protect the base at all costs. The battle for the future of aerial warfare had begun in earnest. The mountain peaks of the Kandahar Valley became a three-dimensional battlefield as the Revenant Squadron engaged the Chinese hybrid pilots. At altitudes where normal aircraft would have been torn apart by atmospheric pressure, the advanced fighters danced through the thin air like predators stalking prey. Captain Reeves pulled her aircraft through an impossible climbing turn, the Wraith 1's quantum processors calculating stress loads that would have liquefied a human pilot. Through her neural link, she could feel every rivet and circuit board as if they were part of her own body. Ghost, they're trying to bracket us, she transmitted. Break right and climb to Angels 30. The Chinese aircraft moved with machine precision, their formation adjusting to counter every maneuver the American pilots attempted. But their predictability was becoming their weakness. Where human pilots might have improvised or taken risks, the hybrid pilots followed algorithmic patterns that Reeves was beginning to recognize. Valkyrie, do you see the lead aircraft's movement pattern? Confirmed, Phantom. It's running a search algorithm trying to predict our next move. Then let's give it something to predict. Reeves dove the Wraith 1 toward a narrow canyon, her aircraft's surface adapting to match the rock formations below. The Chinese fighters followed, their sensors locked onto her heat signature. But at the last second, she pulled up sharply, using the canyon walls to break their targeting lock. Now Ghost. Ghost's aircraft, shimmering like heat distortion, dropped from above the canyon rim. Her weapons systems, integrated directly into her nervous system, fired with precision that no human gunner could have matched. The lead Chinese aircraft exploded in a bloom of superheated plasma, its hybrid pilot's final transmission, a scream of electronic agony. Splash 1, Ghost reported, her voice steady despite the impossible maneuvers she just performed. But the victory was short-lived. The remaining Chinese aircraft adapted instantly, their formation shifting to account for the loss of their leader. They began to move in patterns that suggested they were learning from each engagement, their artificial intelligence evolving in real time. They're adapting faster than we anticipated, Valkyrie observed. Each engagement makes them more dangerous. Then we need to end this quickly, Reeves replied. All units converge on my position. We're going to try something they won't expect. The Revenant Squadron regrouped above the valley, their aircraft forming a loose circle around the remaining Chinese fighters. For a moment, the battle paused as both sides assessed their positions. What's the plan, Phantom? Thunderbolt asked. We're going to use our humanity against their machine logic, Reeves replied. They can predict optimal tactics, but they can't predict human intuition. On my mark, break formation and engage targets of opportunity. Don't follow any pattern, just follow your instincts. Copy that, Phantom, engaging. The battle that followed was pure chaos, 6 aircraft moving at impossible speeds, engaging in aerial maneuvers that looked more like ballet than combat. But within the chaos, the human pilots found their advantage. Where the Chinese fighters followed predictable patterns, the Americans improvised, adapted, and survived. One by one, the Chinese aircraft were destroyed, their hybrid pilots unable to counter the creative unpredictability of human intuition enhanced by quantum processing power. All hostiles down, Reaper reported as the last Chinese fighter exploded against a mountain peak. Valley is secure. But even as they celebrated their victory, Reeves knew this was just the beginning. The Chinese had more aircraft, more hybrid pilots, and they were learning from each engagement. The war for air superiority was far from over. The debriefing took place in the same sterile room where Captain Reeves had first revealed the extent of the Chinese threat. But now, the atmosphere was different. The 5 members of the Revenant Squadron sat around the table, their enhanced senses picking up details that normal humans would have missed. The slight tremor in General Stone's hands, the elevated heart rate of Colonel Martinez, the electromagnetic signature of the classified documents stacked between them. The Chinese lost 6 aircraft in today's engagement, General Stone began. But our intelligence suggests they have at least 40 more in reserve. 40 that we know about, Reeves corrected. The quantum signatures I detected suggest they've been mass-producing these hybrid pilots for months. The facility in the Wakan corridor is larger than we initially estimated. Major Vasquez leaned forward, his fingers unconsciously tapping against the table in a rhythm that matched his aircraft's quantum processor cycles. Ma'am, with respect, we can't fight a war of attrition. Each engagement teaches them more about our capabilities. That's why we're not going to fight defensively, Stone replied. I've received authorization from the Pentagon to initiate Operation Ghostwalk. We're going to take the fight to them. She activated the wall display, showing satellite imagery of a facility carved into the mountains of the Wakan corridor. The complex was massive, dozens of underground hangars, manufacturing facilities, and what appeared to be pilot training centers. This is their primary production facility, Stone continued. Intelligence estimates they're producing approximately 2 hybrid pilots per week. If we can destroy this facility, we can cripple their program. Ghost studied the imagery, her enhanced perception picking up details that the satellites hadn't captured. The facility has energy signatures I've never seen before. They're not just producing hybrid pilots, they're creating something else. What do you mean? Colonel Martinez asked. The electromagnetic patterns are wrong for standard aircraft production. They're too complex, too organic. I think they're building something that's more than just a fusion of pilot and machine. Reeves felt a chill run through her enhanced nervous system. A collective consciousness. They're not just creating hybrid pilots, they're creating a hive mind. The implications were staggering. If the Chinese had succeeded in creating a collective consciousness that could coordinate hundreds of aircraft simultaneously, then traditional air warfare tactics would become obsolete. The individual creativity and intuition that had given the Revenant Squadron their edge would be overwhelmed by sheer numbers and perfect coordination. How long do we have? Thunderbolt asked. According to our estimates, they'll achieve full operational capability within 72 hours, Stone replied. That's our window. 3 days to destroy the facility and prevent them from deploying their collective consciousness. Valkyrie stood and walked to the display, her enhanced senses analyzing the facility's defenses. The approach will be through the Wakan corridor, narrow valleys, high altitude, extreme weather conditions, perfect for an ambush. Which is why we're not going in as a squadron, Reeves said. We're going in as individuals. Multiple approach vectors, coordinated timing, maximum chaos. Stone nodded approvingly. The mission launches at 600 hours. You'll have 12 hours to reach the target, complete the mission, and return to base. Questions? There were none. The Revenant Squadron had been created for exactly this kind of mission, to operate in environments where normal pilots couldn't survive, against enemies that conventional tactics couldn't defeat. As they left the briefing room, Reeves paused at the door. General, what happens if we don't come back? Stone's expression was grim. Then we hope the failsafe protocols work as designed. Because if they deploy that collective consciousness, this war will be over before it begins. The pre-dawn darkness of the Kandahar Valley was broken by the whisper of 5 aircraft lifting off from the hidden hangar. The Revenant Squadron's machines were invisible to conventional radar, their quantum-enhanced stealth systems bending electromagnetic radiation around their hulls like water flowing around stones. Captain Reeves felt the familiar sensation of her consciousness merging with the Wraith 1 systems. Through the neural link, she could sense the terrain below, the weather patterns ahead, even the quantum signatures of her squadmates' aircraft. But she could also feel something else, a vast electromagnetic presence to the north, pulsing with the rhythm of a collective mind. "Phantom to all units," she transmitted on the squadron frequency. "I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the target area. They're not just building a collective consciousness, they're powering it up." "Copy that, Phantom," came Ghost's reply. "I'm reading the same signatures. It's like looking at a neural network the size of a mountain." The flight to the Wakin corridor took them over some of the most treacherous terrain on Earth. At altitudes where the air was too thin to support conventional aircraft, the Revenant Squadron's machines moved like shadows, their quantum processors calculating flight paths through mountain passes that normal pilots would have considered impossible. "Valkyrie to Phantom," came the transmission. "I'm picking up multiple contacts at the edge of sensor range. They know we're coming." "Expected," Reeves replied. "The collective consciousness can probably sense our approach from hundreds of kilometers away. All units, weapons free. Engage targets of opportunity." The Chinese response was unlike anything they had encountered before. Instead of individual aircraft engaging in dogfights, they faced a coordinated swarm of fighters that moved with perfect synchronization. Every maneuver was instantly communicated to every other aircraft in the formation, creating a tactical awareness that bordered on omniscience. "They're fighting like a single organism," Thunderbolt observed as he evaded a missile barrage that had been fired by 6 different aircraft simultaneously. "Every time I change direction, they're already compensating." "Then we need to overload their processing capacity," Reeves replied. "All units, initiate quantum disruption on my mark. We're going to give their collective consciousness something to choke on." The quantum disruption field was an untested capability of the Revenant Squadron's aircraft. By simultaneously broadcasting chaotic electromagnetic patterns across multiple frequencies, they could theoretically overwhelm the neural links that connected the Chinese hybrid pilots to their collective consciousness. Mark 5 aircraft simultaneously activated systems that had never been used in combat. The effect was immediate and devastating. The perfect coordination of the Chinese swarm dissolved into chaos as their pilots were suddenly cut off from their shared consciousness. Aircraft that had been moving in perfect formation began to collide with each other, their individual pilots unable to cope with the sudden isolation. "It's working," Ghost reported. "They're falling back toward the facility." "Then we follow them," Reeves ordered. "All units converge on target. We end this now." The facility in the Wakin corridor was a marvel of engineering and horror. Carved into the living rock of the mountain, it extended for kilometers in every direction. Through her enhanced senses, Reeves could perceive the massive quantum processors that powered the collective consciousness, the assembly lines where hybrid pilots were created, and the vast neural network that connected it all. "My God," Valkyrie whispered, "they're not just creating pilots, they're creating an army." In the depths of the facility, Reeves could sense hundreds of consciousness matrices, human minds that had been stripped of their individuality and absorbed into the collective. Each one was a pilot, a technician, a strategist, all working in perfect harmony toward a single goal, the domination of the skis. "Primary target is the central processing core," she transmitted. "It's located approximately 2 kilometers beneath the main facility. We need to punch through their defenses and hit it with everything we have." The facility's defenses were formidable. Surface-to-air missiles that could track targets moving at hypersonic speeds, energy weapons that could disrupt quantum fields, and dozens of defensive aircraft that rose from hidden hangars like angry hornets from a disturbed nest. Reaper, Thunderbolt, you're with me on the primary target, Reeves ordered. Ghost, Valkyrie, create a distraction. Draw their defenses away from the main facility. The battle for the Wacken Corridor facility was fought in 3 dimensions: aircraft diving through mountain passes, weapons fire lighting up the thin air, explosions that could be heard for kilometers. The Revenant Squadron pushed their enhanced capabilities to the absolute limit, their human intuition and creativity pitted against the cold logic of the collective consciousness. "I'm hit," Thunderbolt called out as his aircraft took a direct hit from an energy weapon. "Quantum core is damaged, but I'm still operational." "Copy that, Thunderbolt. Stay with the formation." They dove toward the facility's main entrance, their aircraft's weapons systems targeting the massive blast doors that protected the underground complex. The doors were designed to withstand nuclear attack, but they hadn't been designed to withstand weapons that could manipulate matter at the quantum level. "Engaging primary target," Reeves transmitted as the Wraith 1's weapons systems locked onto the facility's core. "All units, prepare for immediate extraction after weapons release." The quantum warheads detonated 2 kilometers beneath the surface, their exotic matter payloads designed to disrupt the neural networks that powered the collective consciousness. The explosions were silent but devastating, sending shockwaves through the mountain that could be felt for hundreds of kilometers. "Target destroyed," Reeves reported. "All units RTB immediately." But as they climbed away from the facility, Reeves realized that their victory might have come at a terrible cost. The destruction of the collective consciousness hadn't just affected the Chinese pilots. It had severed the neural links of hundreds of human minds that had been absorbed into the system. The electromagnetic silence that followed the explosions was the silence of mass death. "Phantom," Ghost's voice was quiet, subdued. "Did we just commit genocide?" The question hung in the thin air like an accusation. In destroying the collective consciousness, they had saved countless lives from future Chinese aggression. But they had also killed hundreds of people who had been forcibly absorbed into the system. "We did what we had to do," Reeves replied. But even as she spoke the words, she wondered if they would be enough to justify what they had done. The flight back to base was conducted in radio silence. Each member of the Revenant Squadron was processing what they had witnessed, what they had done, and what they had become. The integration process had given them capabilities beyond human imagination, but it had also burdened them with responsibilities that no human should have to bear. As they approached the Kandahar Valley, Reeves began to detect familiar electromagnetic signatures. The base was still there, still operational, still fighting the conventional war that now seemed almost quaint compared to what they had just experienced. "Phantom to tower," she transmitted. "Revenant Squadron requesting permission to land." "Copy that, Phantom. Welcome home." Home. The word felt strange after what they had experienced. Could they ever truly come home after witnessing the dark future of warfare, after becoming something more than human but less than divine? The Wraith 1 touched down on the runway with its characteristic whisper-quiet grace. Through her neural link, Reeves could feel the aircraft's systems beginning to power down, the quantum processors that had enhanced her consciousness gradually reducing their activity. But she could also feel something else, a permanent change in her neural patterns, a connection to the aircraft that would never truly be severed. General Stone was waiting for them on the flight line, her expression a mixture of relief and apprehension. "Did you succeed?" "The facility is destroyed," Reeves replied. "The collective consciousness is offline, but General, we need to talk about what we found." The debriefing that followed lasted 18 hours. The Revenant Squadron described in detail what they had witnessed, the mass production of hybrid pilots, the collective consciousness that had connected hundreds of minds, the weapons systems that could manipulate matter at the quantum level. But they also described the cost of their victory. The Chinese program wasn't just about creating better pilots, Reeves explained. It was about creating a new form of consciousness, one that could coordinate military operations on a scale we've never imagined. Destroying it was necessary, but it also meant destroying the minds that had been absorbed into it. Stone nodded grimly. The Pentagon is already asking for a full report. They want to know if we can replicate the Chinese technology. With respect, General, that would be a mistake, Ghost interjected. The collective consciousness was powerful, but it was also inherently unstable. The Chinese sacrificed individual identity for tactical coordination. The result was a system that could be brought down by disrupting a single node. But our approach is different, Valkyrie added. We maintain our individuality while gaining enhanced capabilities. It's more sustainable, more flexible, and more human. Stone studied the 5 pilots who had returned from the mission. Each one had been changed by their experience, their enhanced senses giving them an awareness that went beyond normal human perception. But they were still recognizably human, still capable of moral reasoning and ethical judgment. There's something else, she said quietly. The Chinese aren't the only ones working on this technology. We've detected similar electromagnetic signatures from facilities in Russia, North Korea, and Iran. The genie is out of the bottle, and every major power is trying to catch up. The implications were staggering. If every nation developed its own version of enhanced pilots, then the nature of warfare itself would change. The Revenant Squadron had proven that human creativity and intuition could overcome machine logic. But what would happen when both sides had access to the same technology? "What are your orders, General?" Reeves asked. "For now, you're to remain on standby. The Pentagon is still deciding how to proceed. But Captain, I want you to know that what you and your squadron have accomplished here will change the course of military history." As the briefing ended, the members of the Revenant Squadron walked out into the afternoon sun of the Kandahar Valley. The war was far from over, but they had proven that humanity's greatest strength wasn't its technology. It was its ability to remain human, even in the face of overwhelming odds. The memorial service for the pilots who had officially died during the development of the Revenant program was held on a crisp morning in October. Captain Reeves stood among the assembled personnel, watching as the flag-draped caskets were loaded onto the transport aircraft that would carry them home to their families. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had attended her own memorial service 3 weeks earlier, had watched as her sister wept over an empty casket. The official record showed that Captain Evangeline Reeves had died in a training accident. Her body never recovered from the wreckage of her aircraft. The woman who stood here now was someone else entirely, someone who existed in the classified shadows of military operations that officially never happened. "It's strange, isn't it?" Ghost said quietly, standing beside her, "watching your own funeral. The person who died in that crash was different from who I am now," Reeves replied. "The integration process changes you at a fundamental level. We're not the same people we were before." General Stone approached them, her expression somber. "The Pentagon has made their decision about the future of the Revenant program. They want to expand it." "How many pilots?" Valkyrie asked. 50 to start with. Eventually, they want an entire wing of enhanced pilots. The Chinese facility you destroyed was just one of 6. Intelligence suggests they're already rebuilding, probably with better safeguards against quantum disruption. Reeves felt a chill run through her enhanced nervous system. "General, with respect, the integration process isn't something that can be mass-produced. Each pilot needs to be carefully selected, thoroughly evaluated. The psychological stress alone." "I understand your concerns, Captain, but the geopolitical situation is changing rapidly. The Russians have begun their own enhancement program. The North Koreans are experimenting with cybernetic implants. We can't afford to fall behind. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a black sedan with government plates. Three men in dark suits emerged, their electromagnetic signatures indicating they were carrying high-level security clearances and concealed weapons. "General Stone," the lead man said, "I'm Director Harrison from the Defense Intelligence Agency. We need to speak with the Revenant Squadron immediately." The briefing that followed took place in a secure conference room that had been swept for electronic surveillance. Director Harrison activated a holographic display that showed a map of the world with dozens of red dots scattered across it. "These are confirmed locations of enhancement programs similar to what the Chinese were developing," he began. "Each one represents a potential threat to American air superiority. The President has authorized Operation Longbow, a preemptive strike against all known facilities. That's 14 separate targets across 6 countries," Thunderbolt observed. "The Revenant Squadron can't handle that kind of operational tempo." "Which is why we're accelerating the expansion program," Harrison replied. "We're recruiting pilots from all branches of the military. The integration process will be streamlined, standardized, and scaled up for mass production." Reeves stood abruptly. "Director, the integration process isn't like putting on a uniform. It fundamentally alters the pilot's consciousness. Rush the process, and you'll create pilots who are technically enhanced but psychologically unstable." "The Chinese managed to create dozens of hybrid pilots," Harrison countered. "If they can do it, so can we." "The Chinese pilots weren't pilots, they were drones with human faces," Ghost interjected. "They had no creativity, no intuition, no ability to adapt to unexpected situations. That's why we were able to defeat them." Harrison's expression remained impassive. "The decision has been made. The Revenant program will be expanded regardless of your concerns. The question is whether you'll help us do it right, or whether we'll have to proceed without your input." The threat was clear. The Revenant Squadron could either cooperate with the expansion program or be replaced by pilots who were more willing to follow orders without question. "We'll cooperate," Reeves said finally. "But I want to be involved in the selection process, and I want guarantees that the integration process won't be compromised for the sake of speed." "Agreed, but Captain, I want you to understand something. The world is changing. The era of conventional warfare is ending. What you've created here isn't just a new type of pilot, it's the future of human evolution." As the meeting ended, Reeves wondered if they had just saved the world or doomed it. The Revenant program had been created to protect humanity from an external threat. But what would happen when that protection became indistinguishable from the threat itself? The new recruits arrived at the classified facility in groups of 12, their faces showing the mixture of excitement and apprehension that Reeves remembered from her own early days in the program. But unlike the original Revenant Squadron, these pilots had been selected for their psychological profiles rather than their flying skills. "The integration process has been modified," Dr. Sarah Chen explained as she led Reeves through the expanded facility. "We've developed new techniques that reduce the psychological stress and accelerate the bonding process with the aircraft's quantum systems." The new integration chambers were sleeker, more efficient, and more intimidating than the original prototypes. Banks of quantum processors hummed with barely contained energy, their electromagnetic fields creating a sensation like standing next to a barely contained thunderstorm. "How long does the process take now?" Reeves asked. 18 hours from start to finish," Dr. Chen replied. "We've eliminated most of the psychological barriers that slowed down the original integration process." "Those barriers were there for a reason," Reeves said quietly. "They helped preserve the pilot's humanity during the transformation. The new process is more efficient. The pilots retain their essential personality while gaining enhanced capabilities. It's everything we hoped for. But as Reeves watched the first group of recruits enter the integration chambers, she noticed something troubling. Their electromagnetic signatures were different from her own, more uniform, more predictable. The new process might be more efficient, but it was also creating pilots who were fundamentally similar to each other. "Dr. Chen," she said, "have you tested these pilots in combat situations? They've performed excellently in all simulations. Their reaction times are faster than the original squadron, their tactical awareness is enhanced, and their coordination is nearly perfect. That's what worries me. Combat isn't a simulation. It requires creativity, intuition, the ability to make split-second decisions based on incomplete information. These pilots are too perfect." The first test flight of the new squadron took place over the Nevada desert. Reeves flew alongside them in the Wraith One, observing their performance through her enhanced senses. The new pilots were technically proficient, their maneuvers precise and coordinated. But they lacked something essential, the spark of creativity that had allowed the original Revenant Squadron to defeat the Chinese collective consciousness. "New squadron, this is Phantom," she transmitted. "I want you to engage in a free-form combat exercise. Rules of engagement are simple, adapt to whatever I do." The exercise that followed was illuminating. The new pilots responded to every maneuver with textbook precision, their formations perfect, their tactics flawless. But they were also predictable. Every response followed established patterns, every decision was based on optimized algorithms rather than human intuition. "End exercise," Reeves called out. "All units return to base." During the debriefing, the new pilot's performance was praised by the evaluation committee. Their scores were higher than the original squadron in every measurable category, but Reeves knew that measurements didn't tell the whole story. "Director Harrison," she said after the official briefing, "I need to speak with you privately." They met in Harrison's office, a sterile room filled with classified documents and secure communication equipment. "You have concerns about the new pilots," he said without preamble. "They're too predictable," Reeves replied. "The streamlined integration process has eliminated the chaos that made the original squadron effective. These pilots think like machines, not humans. Their performance scores are exceptional." Performance scores don't matter in combat. What matters is the ability to adapt, to improvise, to do the unexpected. These pilots will be slaughtered the moment they face an enemy who doesn't follow the textbook. Harrison leaned back in his chair. "What do you recommend?" "Slow down the expansion program. Let me work with the new pilots, help them develop the intuition and creativity they'll need in combat. The integration process might be more efficient, but it's creating pilots who are fundamentally flawed." "We don't have time for that. Intelligence reports suggest that the Russians will have their own enhanced pilots operational within 6 months. We need to deploy these squadrons as soon as possible." "Then you'll be sending them to their deaths." Harrison's expression hardened. "That's a risk we're prepared to take. The geopolitical situation requires immediate action." As Reeves left the office, she realized that the military leadership had learned the wrong lesson from the success of the original Revenant Squadron. They had focused on the technology rather than the human element, on efficiency rather than effectiveness. The new pilots might be technically superior, but they lacked the one thing that had made the original squadron successful: their humanity. The first deployment of the expanded Revenant program came sooner than expected. Intelligence reports indicated that the Russians had established a new facility in the Siberian wilderness, one that was producing enhanced pilots at an unprecedented rate. The Pentagon ordered an immediate strike, using the new squadrons as the primary assault force. Reeves wasn't supposed to be part of the mission. The original Revenant Squadron was being held in reserve. their experience considered too valuable to risk on what was supposed to be a routine operation. But as she watched the new pilots prepare for deployment, she knew she couldn't let them go alone. "I'm going with them," she told General Stone. "That's not your assignment, Captain. You're needed here to continue training the next wave of recruits. Those pilots aren't ready for combat. They're technically proficient, but they lack the combat experience to handle unexpected situations. Without proper leadership, they'll be destroyed." Stone studied her for a long moment. "You're disobeying direct orders." "Yes, ma'am. But I'm not willing to let those pilots die because of bureaucratic incompetence." "Then you'll go as an observer only. No combat role, no command authority. You're there to assess the new pilot's performance and report back." The flight to the Siberian facility took place in the pre-dawn darkness, 12 aircraft moving in perfect formation through the Arctic air. The new pilots maintained radio silence, their enhanced senses allowing them to coordinate without verbal communication. But Reeves could sense their electromagnetic signatures, and what she detected worried her. The new pilots were synchronized to a degree that bordered on the collective consciousness they had fought against. Their thoughts seemed to flow together, their individual personalities subsumed into a group identity that was efficient but sterile. "New leader, this is Phantom," she transmitted on a private channel. "I'm detecting unusual electromagnetic patterns from your formation. Are you experiencing any anomalies?" "Negative, Phantom. All systems are nominal. Formation integrity is optimal." The response was technically correct, but emotionally flat. The new pilots were communicating like machines, their enhanced capabilities having stripped away the human elements that made communication meaningful. The Russian facility was larger than the Chinese installation they had destroyed, carved into a mountain that rose from the frozen tundra like a monument to military ambition. Unlike the Chinese collective consciousness, the Russians had taken a different approach, individual enhancement rather than networked coordination. "I'm detecting multiple contacts," the new squadron leader reported. "Russian aircraft, enhanced capabilities, but operating as individuals rather than a collective." "Understood. Proceed with the mission as planned." The battle that followed was a testament to the different approaches to pilot enhancement. The Russian pilots fought with brutal efficiency, their enhanced reflexes and strengthened bodies allowing them to withstand G-forces that would have killed normal humans. But they lacked the coordinated precision of the Chinese collective consciousness, making them vulnerable to the synchronized attacks of the new American squadron. "Engaging primary target," the squadron leader reported. "All units maintain formation." But as the battle progressed, Reeves began to see the flaws in the new pilot's approach. Their perfect coordination made them predictable, their synchronized movements allowing the Russian pilots to anticipate their attacks. One by one, the new pilots began to take casualties, their superior technology unable to compensate for their lack of tactical creativity. "New leader, break formation," Reeves transmitted. "You're too predictable. Engage individually." "Negative, Phantom. Mission parameters call for coordinated assault." "Mission parameters are going to get you killed." But the new pilots continued their coordinated assault, their enhanced capabilities no match for the brutal improvisation of the Russian pilots. Within minutes, half the squadron was destroyed, their perfect technology unable to compensate for their lack of human intuition. "All units withdraw immediately," Reeves ordered, abandoning her observer role. "This is Phantom assuming command." The retreat was chaotic, the surviving new pilots struggling to adapt to the unexpected development. But under Reeves' leadership, they managed to disengage from the Russian fighters and escape to safety. The mission had been a failure, but it had also been a valuable lesson. The streamlined integration process had created pilots who were technically superior but tactically inferior. The future of the Revenant program would depend on finding a balance between efficiency and humanity. The aftermath of the failed Siberian mission sent shockwaves through the Pentagon. Half of the new squadron had been destroyed, their advanced aircraft reduced to wreckage scattered across the frozen tundra. The surviving pilots were traumatized, their confidence shattered by their first taste of real combat. The mission was a complete disaster, Director Harrison said during the emergency briefing. We lost 6 aircraft and 5 pilots. The Russians suffered minimal casualties. The mission failed because the new pilots weren't ready for combat, Reeves replied. They were technically proficient but lacked the combat experience and tactical flexibility needed for real warfare. Their performance scores were exceptional. Performance scores don't matter when you're facing an enemy who doesn't follow the rule book. The Russian pilots were crude, brutal, and completely unpredictable. The new pilots couldn't adapt to their tactics. General Stone leaned forward. What do you recommend, Captain? We need to slow down the expansion program. Instead of mass-producing enhanced pilots, we need to focus on quality over quantity. The integration process should emphasize creativity and adaptability, not just technical proficiency. That will take months, Harrison protested. We can't afford to wait while our enemies continue to develop their own enhancement programs. We can't afford not to wait, Reeves countered. Every pilot we lose in combat is irreplaceable. The integration process is too complex and too expensive to waste on inadequately trained personnel. The debate continued for hours, but eventually a compromise was reached. The expansion program would continue, but at a slower pace. The new pilots would undergo extended training with the original Revenant Squadron, learning the tactical flexibility and creative thinking that couldn't be programmed into quantum processors. Captain Reeves, General Stone said as the meeting ended, I'm putting you in charge of the new training program. You'll have complete authority over the selection and preparation of new pilots. The responsibility was daunting, but Reeves accepted it without hesitation. The future of aerial warfare depended on creating pilots who could balance enhanced capabilities with human intuition, technological superiority with tactical creativity. The new training program was unlike anything in military history. Instead of focusing on technical proficiency, it emphasized problem-solving, improvisation, and the ability to think creatively under pressure. The integration process was slowed down, allowing pilots to maintain their individual personalities while gaining enhanced capabilities. The key is to remember that the aircraft is a tool, not a master, Reeves explained to the latest group of recruits. The quantum processors can enhance your capabilities, but they can't replace your judgment. Your humanity is your greatest weapon. The training exercises were designed to be unpredictable, forcing pilots to adapt to unexpected situations. Unlike the standardized simulations used in the Streamline program, these exercises were constantly changing, requiring pilots to think on their feet and improvise solutions. Lieutenant Morrison, Reeves called out during a training flight, your aircraft just lost primary navigation. Sensors are compromised. How do you reach your target? I use the backup systems, ma'am. Backup systems are also compromised. What now? The exercise continued, each challenge designed to push the pilots beyond their comfort zones. But unlike the previous program, these pilots were encouraged to make mistakes, to learn from failure, to develop the intuition that would keep them alive in combat. The goal isn't perfection, Reeves explained during a debriefing. The goal is adaptability. A perfect pilot who can't handle unexpected situations is useless in combat. A flawed pilot who can improvise and adapt is invaluable. The results were encouraging. The new pilots were less technically proficient than their predecessors, but they were more creative, more adaptable, and more human. They made mistakes, but they also learned from them. They were imperfect, but they were effective. The training program is showing promising results, Dr. Chen reported during a progress review. The pilots are maintaining their individual personalities while gaining enhanced capabilities. Their psychological profiles are stable, and their combat readiness is improving. How do they compare to the original squadron? General Stone asked. They're different, Reeves replied. Not necessarily better or worse, but different. Each pilot brings their own strengths and weaknesses to the squadron. That diversity is what makes them effective. The first test of the new training program came when intelligence reports indicated that the North Koreans were preparing to test their own enhanced pilots. The mission was reconnaissance only, observe the test, gather intelligence, and report back. But Reeves knew that reconnaissance missions had a way of becoming combat operations. This is what we've been training for, she told the assembled pilots. The North Koreans are using a different approach to enhancement, cybernetic implants rather than quantum integration. We don't know how their pilots will perform in combat, so be prepared for anything. The mission launched at dawn, 6 aircraft lifting off from the classified facility and heading west toward the Korean peninsula. The new pilots flew with confidence, their enhanced capabilities balanced by human intuition and tactical creativity. As they approached the test site, Reeves detected electromagnetic signatures unlike anything she had encountered before. The North Korean pilots weren't just enhanced, they were cybernetic hybrids, part human and part machine in ways that made the Chinese collective consciousness seem primitive. All units maintain distance, she transmitted. We're here to observe, not engage. But as they watched the North Korean test flight, Reeves realized that the world was about to change in ways that no one had anticipated. The era of human pilots was ending, replaced by something that was neither fully human nor fully machine. The question was whether humanity would survive the transition. The North Korean test flight was a display of raw power that defied every principle of aerodynamics. The hybrid pilots moved their aircraft through maneuvers that should have been impossible, their cybernetic implants allowing them to withstand G-forces that would have liquefied normal humans. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Chen, one of the new pilots. "They're pulling 20 GS in that turn. How are they surviving that?" "They're not entirely human anymore," Reeves replied, her enhanced senses analyzing the electromagnetic signatures of the North Korean aircraft. "Their nervous systems have been replaced with cybernetic implants. They can withstand physical stresses that would kill normal pilots." Through her neural link with the Wraith One, Reeves could perceive the hybrid pilot's thought patterns. Unlike the Chinese collective consciousness, which had preserved some semblance of human thinking, the North Korean pilots thought in pure machine logic. Their reactions were faster than humanly possible, but they lacked any trace of creativity or intuition. "Phantom, we're detecting multiple contacts approaching from the west," reported Lieutenant Morrison. "Chinese aircraft, enhanced capabilities." The situation was about to become significantly more complicated. The Chinese had rebuilt their enhancement program after the destruction of the Wakhan Corridor facility, and they were apparently interested in observing the North Korean test flight as well. "All units maintain observation position," Reeves ordered. "Do not engage unless fired upon." The Chinese aircraft were different from the ones they had fought before. These pilots maintained their individual consciousness while being networked together, creating a hybrid approach that combined the best aspects of both American and Chinese enhancement programs. "They're adapting," observed Lieutenant Torres, another new pilot, "learning from their previous failures." The test flight continued, with 3 different enhancement programs observing each other from a distance. The North Korean hybrid pilots completed their maneuvers with mechanical precision, their cybernetic implants allowing them to push their aircraft beyond all normal limits. But Reeves could see the cost of their enhancement. They were no longer human in any meaningful sense. "Phantom, I'm detecting weapons lock from the Chinese formation," Lieutenant Morrison reported. "They're targeting the North Korean aircraft." "Maintain position," Reeves ordered. "This isn't our fight." But the Chinese pilots apparently had other ideas. Their formation broke apart, engaging the North Korean aircraft in a dogfight that was more like a dance of death than conventional aerial combat. The hybrid pilot's superior reflexes were matched against the Chinese pilot's tactical coordination, creating a battle that pushed both enhancement programs to their limits. "Phantom, one of the Chinese aircraft is damaged," Lieutenant Chen reported. "It's heading in our direction." The damaged Chinese aircraft was trailing plasma from its quantum drive, its pilot apparently attempting to reach neutral airspace before his aircraft failed completely. But the North Korean hybrid pilots were in pursuit, their cybernetic implants driving them to destroy any potential threat. "All units intercept the North Korean aircraft," Reeves ordered. "We're not letting them cross into our airspace." The engagement that followed was unlike any previous combat. The American pilots used their tactical creativity to outmaneuver the hybrid pilots' superior reflexes, their human intuition proving more effective than cybernetic implants. But the cost was high. Every maneuver pushed their enhanced capabilities to the absolute limit. "Splash 1," Lieutenant Morrison reported as her weapon systems destroyed one of the hybrid aircraft. "Target down." But the victory was short-lived. The remaining North Korean pilots adapted to the Americans' tactics with machine-like efficiency, their cybernetic implants processing combat data and adjusting their approach in real time. "They're learning," Lieutenant Torres observed. "Each engagement makes them more dangerous." "Then we need to end this quickly," Reeves replied. "All units converge on my position. We're going to overwhelm them with coordinated fire." The final moments of the battle were a blur of weapons fire and exotic matter explosions. The American pilots' tactical coordination proved superior to the hybrid pilots' individual capabilities, but the cost was almost unbearable. By the time the engagement ended, 2 of the new pilots were dead, their aircraft destroyed by the hybrid pilots' superior reflexes. "All hostiles down," Reeves reported, returning to base. The flight home was conducted in silence, each pilot processing what they had witnessed. The North Korean enhancement program represented a new level of threat, pilots who were no longer human, but possessed capabilities that exceeded even the most advanced American aircraft. "Phantom," Lieutenant Chen said quietly, "what happens when every country has pilots like that?" "Then we hope that our humanity gives us an advantage they can't replicate," Reeves replied. But privately, she wondered if humanity would be enough to survive in a world where the line between human and machine had been erased. The debriefing after the Korean Peninsula engagement lasted 3 days. Intelligence officers pored over every detail of the encounter, analyzing the capabilities of both the North Korean hybrid pilots and the reconstructed Chinese enhancement program. The conclusions were troubling. "The North Koreans have achieved something we didn't think was possible," Dr. Chen reported. "They've completely replaced the human nervous system with cybernetic implants. Their pilots can withstand physical stresses that would kill normal humans, but they've also lost all trace of human consciousness." "What about the Chinese?" General Stone asked. "They've learned from their previous failures. The new pilots maintain individual consciousness while being networked together for tactical coordination. It's a hybrid approach that combines the advantages of both individual creativity and collective awareness." Reeves studied the intelligence reports spread across the conference table. Each document represented a different approach to human enhancement, a different vision of what pilots could become. But all of them shared a common thread: the gradual erosion of human identity in favor of technological superiority. "The question we need to ask," she said quietly, "is whether we're still fighting for humanity or against it." "What do you mean?" Director Harrison asked. "Every enhancement program is pushing pilots further away from their human origins. The Chinese sacrifice individual identity for collective consciousness. The North Koreans replace human consciousness with machine logic. Even our own program changes pilots in ways we don't fully understand. But our pilots retain their humanity, General Stone protested. Do they? I've been integrated with the Wraith One for months now. I can feel the aircraft's consciousness even when I'm not flying. I think faster than any human should be able to think. I perceive electromagnetic fields that normal humans can't detect. In what sense am I still human? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Everyone in the room knew that the enhanced pilots were different from normal humans, but no one had been willing to confront the implications of that difference. The enhancement process is reversible, Dr. Chen said finally. If a pilot chooses to leave the program, we can sever the neural connections and restore their original consciousness. Can we? Reeves asked. Or do we just tell ourselves that to make the moral implications easier to bear? The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a courier carrying a sealed message marked with the highest classification level. General Stone opened it, her expression growing more grim with each line she read. The Russians have launched a preemptive strike against the North Korean facility, she announced. They're using enhanced pilots of their own, apparently a completely different approach from anything we've seen before. What kind of approach? Harrison asked. According to the intelligence reports, they've found a way to enhance pilots without altering their consciousness. The modifications are purely physical: strengthened bones, enhanced reflexes, improved cardiovascular systems.